Hello, viewers of the Spell Re, and welcome to this compilation of What If Asta was Yami Sukehiro's reincarnation, also known as Captain Yami from the Black Bulls. Now, this is a Black Clover, My Hero Academia What If that is different from the other Black Clover and My Hero Academia What If on this YouTube channel. Quite a bit different. I came up with some fun ideas for this one, though the view counts for it have been pretty bad and I had only put out 3 parts, so I'm going to see how well this does, and decide whether or not I'm going to make any more of the series. But I do sincerely hope you enjoy, and if nothing else, maybe this will get your imagination going. And without further ado, let's get started. We start in the Clover Kingdom, at the final battle, as they are losing. Many Magic Knights are dead, scattered around, as the plan has failed. But there's one last hope, as Captain William Bongens has managed to survive to this point in this timeline, activating the Rebirth Protocol. This was a magic that Julius Novachrono had finished just in time, combining the reincarnation magic of the elves with William's World Tree. They would send the souls of everyone who's died on the continent to another world. As Yami was trying to hold off Lucius, as Lucius would blast Yami, as a large hole would open up in his chest, as Yami would go down. As Lucius said, "I'm trying to bring world peace. You, better than anyone, should know that," as he was cut off as tree roots started shooting up, as light surrounded, as he looked around in surprise and said, "Who would have guessed this small 1 in a million chance would occur?" As he rushed off to try to find William to stop this. For this would mean that all of his plans would go to waste. As Yami's mental state would fade, he could feel that Lucius couldn't stop this. The magic was already in effect. Even if he killed William, it would have no difference. As his mind floated, wondering who he would run into in this new world. Would everyone be sent to the same place? As he stopped floating eventually, after feeling like he had been floating for an undetermined amount of time. As he felt stable. As he looked through the eyes of the being he had come to rest in. It was a young baby with a mother with green hair. Yami tried moving an arm, but he realized he was a passenger. Like the elves, the reincarnated souls wouldn't necessarily be in control. As Yami would quickly start wondering how long it would take him to actually figure out how to talk to this child he found out was named Izuku Midoriya. Yami smiled at the fact that, seemingly, since somehow, despite them going to another world, he had been born in at least a culture that had a similar naming convention to the land of the rising sun, his homeland. He felt it was slightly poetic. As days and weeks would become years, Midoriya would befriend a boy named Bakugo, and he was told he was quirkless. Yami scoffed, as internally he said, "I wonder if this kid's just going to turn into this version of Asta." But, I think this will be interesting. As one day, Bakugo would be bullying someone as Izuku got in front of him and told him, stop acting like a villain, Kacchan." As Bakugo got angry at hearing this, as he prepared to blow up Izuku, as the fight would start, Izuku would pick up a stick to try to defend himself, as he felt nostalgic about holding it for some reason as he swung. And to his surprise, dark shadows would begin accumulating around the stick. As Yami, inside his mind, would be trying to push his memories and his magic into Midoriya. As Midoriya, after getting knocked to the ground, would get back up, say, "I'm gonna stop you from hurting him!" As he rushed in, with shadows starting to emanate off of his body, and the stick he was wielding as he hit Bakugo in the face. This would not be a victory for Izuku. Or at least, not completely. As the two would start to fight, Midoriya would hit Bakugo in the face multiple times as he managed to whack Bakugo's two companions too. Bakugo's quirk, being at least at this stage more powerful, would detonate, leaving Izuku with multiple bruises, as Bakugo would be left with many bruises as well, thanks to a dark magic empowered stick. As they both would stand there panting, this fight would stop. After Midoriya would get home, the next day Bakugo's mother would come over and apologize. Bakugo hadn't been able to hide what happened after all the bruises. And frankly, Midoriya didn't even really care on what happened. He had gotten a quirk. The diagnosis was wrong. The diagnosis that had held him down for months. And he had a quirk. It didn't matter that people had already called it villainous. Midoriya would make it work. He would become a hero. As inside of his head, Yami would smile. As he remembered back to Julius setting this up. He remembered asking Julius about what the whole plan was. As Julius had told him, he made this in case the devils won. It wasn't even completely his idea. Other wizard kings had thought of a similar idea. But with the elves revealing the presence of reincarnation magic, and William's world tree magic, along with the Heart Kingdom's natural mana method, mixed with some other spatial magic, Julius had an idea. He would attach beacons around the Clover Kingdom, and they would transport the souls to another world, along with magic and even grimoire towers, with the plan of basically going to some other world if the demons overran this one. As Yami smiled, as he thought, as Yami would look around, when he had first entered the mindscape, all it was dark. As Midoriya had grown, the mindscape had grown along with it. Grass and trees, to buildings. To Yami even able to show Midoriya his memories in his dreams. It was the closest thing he could do, trying to send memories of battles. As Midoriya would grow stronger, it even entered into what was Quirk swordsmanship. The decline of normal swordsmanship as quirks emerged had troubled him. So he had created this. Small tournaments where kids could use their quirks and swordplay to try to revive the art. Keep it going with some pro heroes. Midoriya had won this tournament. It was one of his most pleasant memories. He battled strong fighters and won. But yet, people still call this quirk villainous. Inside of his head, Yami would scoff. Even though they're in a different world, some things stay the same. We've flashed to Midoriya. Midoriya in his final year of middle school. He was 14, and everyone already was talking about him. He had a fearsome darkness quirk, and it didn't help that he constantly had a wooden practice sword on him. He had won an actual sword at the tournament, but he wasn't allowed to carry that around for obvious reasons. Instead, he carried a wooden practice sword that he could always imbue with his darkness. Midoriya always felt off without at least some weight on his hip. As the teacher was about to pass around Midoriya wasn't sure. He had been tired doing hero studies and trying to work on his quirk the night before. He was still top of his class, but he had been dozing off. He had been constantly getting memories of battles with darkness and an unknown man. As Midoriya just asked, why are they handing out stuff to relate to jobs before any of us even go to high school? Shaking his head just in time for him to see the teacher throw them up in the air and say, we all know you just want to go to the hero track. As everyone went wild. As Midoriya started to think, man, I really need to stop working on my quirk late at night trying to come up with theories. I can't be tired this often. As Bakugo would hop up on a desk and say, let's be real, Teach. I'm the only one, and maybe Deku over there are the only two that can really become pros. As Midoriya mentally facepalmed, Bakugo had to drag him into this. As he started to think back, Bakugo was still a jerk, but it wasn't as bad. As he thinks back to the time when Mitsuki brought him over to apologize, Bakugo had repaired their friendship to a point, but instead of Bakugo and Midoriya getting back to how they were, Bakugo, as they left after apologizing, turned to Izuku and said, I'm still gonna call you Deku, because you're still a Deku until you become the #1 hero. And you're never gonna become the #1 hero because I am! And that had started their rivalry. As Midoriya came back to the present, as he just said, don't bring me into the whole class shouting at you. As Bakugo looked at him and said, is that a challenge? As the teacher said, enough, both of you. Sit back down. As after class, Bakugo would approach Midoriya and say, so, the teacher mentioned you were planning on going to UA. Is that true? As Midoriya looked at him and said, yes. As Bakugo gave him a toothy grin, as he just said, I'm going there too. And I guess we'll have to see who manages to get better. As Midoriya started internally rolling his eyes. As he was about to say something, one of Bakugo's lackeys said, hey, is that one of your hero notebooks? As Midoriya took a look at it, as he said, it's actually my dream notebook. As Bakugo quickly grabbed it before Midoriya could stop him. As Bakugo opened up the thing and said, still having those dreams? It's just your imagination, Deku. As he looked at some of the rough notes in the drawings, mentioning grimoires, magical books. As Bakugo shook his head and tossed it out the window. As Midoriya said, what was that for? As Bakugo just said, Midoriya, you've been having those same dreams since we were, 4? Maybe 6? You can either put them in your dream journal, or how about you just start writing a story with it? After all, you've been having your hero and dream notebook since we're old enough to write. As Midoriya, ignoring this, would actually just hop out the window. As he focused on his feet as darkness surrounded it as he landed. The darkness absorbing the blow as he grabbed his notebook and landed in the grass. Midoriya looked and noticed that he nearly threw it in the fish pond. As Bakugo just said, don't forget, I am going to become the #1 hero, Deku. As Midoriya looked up and gave Bakugo a rude gesture for throwing his notebook out the window, walking off. Midoriya felt tired and decided to go straight home. He tried to get a nap in before dinner and homework. He had been kicked out of the kendo club. Midoriya kept insisting that the cabin allow them to use quirks with kendo, and that it's unrealistic to fight anyone without it nowadays. He had gotten under the captain's nerves so much that he had kicked Midoriya out eventually. As Midoriya was walking under a tunnel, he would hear something, a gurgling coming from the sewer. As a goo monster would come out, Midoriya would jump back, reach to his side, and pull out the wooden practice sword, as he channeled darkness into it, as it got covered in it. As the sludge monster would just say, "Alright, kid. I see you're a feisty one. Where about me? I'm just gonna try to steal your body." As he tried leaping to him, as Midoriya brought his sword up and brought it down, as a wave of darkness came off of it, as it hit the sludge monster. The sludge monster cried out in pain as the blow managed to peel into the sludge monster. As he tried going at Midoriya, Midoriya would dodge before cutting through the tendril. But as the sludge fell, it reached out and grabbed Midoriya, the sludge monster coming in for an attack. As Midoriya would hear someone say, "Detroit Smash!" As Midoriya had two thoughts in those seconds, one of which being, "Oh man, it's All Might!" And the second thought is, "Oh crap, I don't think he sees me!" As air pressure would come out and hit both of them. As Midoriya would have wind knocked out of him, as he would pass out. A second later, he would shake his head and see All Might tapping him, as he would see All Might finishing to gather up the sludge villain in soda bottles. Midoriya would have a few seconds wondering how on earth did All Might get the sludge villain trapped in, 2-liter soda bottles. As Midoriya would shake his head and say, "It's All Might. Can you..." As All Might said, "I already did." As he looked in his notebook and saw All Might already signed it. As All Might said, "Sorry about that, kid. I didn't see you there at first." As Midoriya would sense something. He had noticed in his dreams and had tried picking up on it. The dreams always called it ki. But when he felt All Might's, the ki felt off. He couldn't quite put his finger on it. As All Might would just say, "You're a brave kid. I think you'll be a great hero one day." As Midoriya was super happy, but it seemed like All Might was hurrying. As before Midoriya could even say anything, All Might would jump off. Midoriya shrugging. As, thanks to the adrenaline, Midoriya was fully awake. Midoriya would shrug. "Instead of a nap, I guess I'll go do something by the arcades." As Midoriya would start moving towards the arcades. As he would be getting close, he would hear a large explosion as he rushed forward. As he would see the same sludge villain attacking Bakugo. As fire raged in the area, it was clear Bakugo was trying to use his explosions to get free, but he couldn't. He looked around to see what the pro heroes were doing, and, well, the first reaction would probably be they weren't doing their jobs, but Midoriya, with his experience analyzing quirks, realized it wasn't their fault. After all, one of the heroes had at least part of his body made out of wood. And fire wasn't really good. Another one was trying to contain the fire, and most of the others were just trying to get people out of buildings and try to keep the fire under control. No one had a quirk strong enough to try to get Bakugo out of the sludge villain. His body started moving on his own, as he brought out his practice sword and threw his bag at the sludge monster. The sludge monster swiped it away and said, "You!" as he tried whipping his arm back and hitting Midoriya with it. Midoriya would dodge and come up with his sword. As the sludge monster would push him back as another tendril would shoot out, Midoriya would jump back. As Midoriya took a second to think, he would think, "Oh God, what was I thinking?" How am I gonna get Bakugo out of this thing's clutches? My quirk can't do it. I'm not physically strong enough to blow it away like All Might. In fact, I don't even think it's quirk's super strength. What am I gonna do? As an event would occur at this time. And the following days. As something would go flying in the air and go right in front of Midoriya. A book. A black book with a clover on it. As Midoriya would be taken aback, he would get hit by the sludge villain. As he would get sent flying. As the sludge villain said, "Why the heck did a book come flying out? Did some poor civilian try throwing a book at me with their quirk?" As the book would float back towards Midoriya. As the pages would flip. As Midoriya would read it. Midoriya would glance and see it. As he smiled. As he rushed forward, the pages in the book would flip. As Midoriya would yell, "Dark magic! Dark slash!" As a wave of darkness would fly at the sludge villain. As the sludge villain would just shoot out sludge to defend as it cut through it. As it slammed into the sludge villain and Bakugo. The sludge would clear a little bit as Bakugo would push his hands towards the ground and explode, sending himself up. As the sludge villain would get larger and prepare to swap both of them with his tendrils, All Might would come out of nowhere and release a smash, so powerful it changed the weather. As Midoriya would look up at him and say, "So cool." Bakugo would look at Midoriya and say, "I can't believe you've already gotten stronger." As this would go similar to in canon, where Midoriya would be lectured for his actions. Bakugo would be slightly praised. The next day, Midoriya would wake up as his mother said, "Midoriya, I'm glad you're up. Your two friends are at the door." As Midoriya would look and see Bakugo and Noct walking in. As he looked at him and said, "Why are you here?" As they both held up a book with a 3-leaf clover on it. We start off shortly after Noct and Bakugo both told Midoriya that they had also received books yesterday. Bakugo said that some was already written, but there was a lot of blank pages. Same with Noct. Noct had been Midoriya's friend for a long time. They had actually met because their magics were both thought of as villainous. Noct had a shadow quirk with a sentient element, which Midoriya always thought was interesting. Every once in a while, there would be several small creatures that would pop out. But they seemed to be really excited about these books. Midoriya had to admit, he had no idea what those things were. He always felt slightly creeped out when he saw them. While Bakugo was less enthusiastic why he got a weird book. As it was a 3-leaf clover and was a yellowish red on the front. As Midoriya showed that he could summon his. As he held out his hand as the book quickly came to his side. As Bakugo and Noct tried doing the same thing, and they did. And with this, all three of them would be getting ready for the UA entrance exam. Midoriya would be training his swordplay and usage of his quirk. Noct would help Midoriya train, but he was kind of secretive. Midoriya asked him what school he was going to, and if he was also going to UA. Noct said he wasn't. When Midoriya asked why, Noct says his parents wanted him and his brother to go somewhere else. As Midoriya nodded, Noct's brother was a really good guy. And he was a good friend, though everyone thought he was a wonderful person, unlike his brother or Midoriya. And Midoriya had to admit, it got on his nerves sometimes. Especially one time when they were little and hanging out. Someone actually asked Noct's brother why he hanged out with such villainous people. Of course, that was before he won the sword tournament, and people got afraid to actually pick on him since he was so strong. Baka would train by himself because, in his own words, I don't want either of you trying to copy me. As Midoriya looked online and found something he called the American Dream Plan, which was basically just a workout routine to help build muscle. Midoriya would try to do it, and in 10 months, the entrance exam would come. As Midoriya would go to the entrance, Baka would pass him, and Midoriya was so nervous he didn't see a stone and nearly tripped. A girl with brunette hair would use her quirk to catch him. As Midoriya said thank you, as she said, no problem. My quirk allows me to nullify gravity on an object. I didn't want you to have an accident right before the exam. That would just be bad luck. And she would hurry off herself. As the entrance exam would start, as shortly after the written portion, President Mike would be doing the combat orientation, as Midoriya was writing things down. As he would be mumbling writing things down, a blue-haired boy would get up and ask him, are you not taking things seriously? You are one of the most prestigious schools in the nation. As Bago just got up and told him to be quiet. Midoriya mumbles a lot when he's taking notes. Midoriya, happy that Bakugo actually stood up instead of poking fun at him, he would also be glaring daggers at this blue-haired boy with glasses. Especially since he was being a bigger disruption than he was. He would point out the inconsistency as President Mike would explain it away. As Midoriya would think, yeah, there's definitely something up with the zero-pointer. As they would proceed to the different points, Midoriya would look around and see a lot of interesting people. As he would, a boy with red hair that was, you could almost describe as orange. A little taller than he was. As he would see the same brunette, as she looked nervous. But as he was about to go give her a thumbs up and tell her that she will do great, as the same blue-haired boy with glasses walked up and grabbed his shoulder, as he accused Midoriya of trying to sabotage the brunette-haired girl. As Midoriya shook this boy's hand off of his shoulder, as he just looked at him and told him to his face that he wasn't going to try to sabotage her. She looks nervous. I was going to try to give her encouragement. If you have a problem with me, tell it to my face. As Midoriya's blood was starting to get a little hot. After all, he had called him out a little bit ago. The boy would just back off for a second, as this would startle him. As Midoriya would look around and see that everyone was staring at him. He would just get in position as President Mike would open the gate, as no one would move for a second before Midoriya would realize something and rush forward. President Mike would get the announcements for everyone and say, what are you doing? There's no start signal in actual battle. Go, go, go! As everyone else would rush forward. Midoriya would be able to bring in his sword, since he had filed the correct paperwork. As the first robot Midoriya would come across would meet a swift end, as things would go very well for Midoriya, particularly at first, as he was able to down a robot with several well-placed cuts. He would rescue some participants that were having issues. A few of the robots would be a challenge for him, though, as some would manage to block his sword or use a long-range attack, but these would not faze him, as he noticed the number of the robots being blasted with presumably heat-based attacks, as he would also notice that the girl that helped him was also using her gravity-based quirk to basically force robots to go into the air and crash back down, as Midoriya would pick up on something happening as the ground would begin to shake. As a zero-pointer would appear, Midoriya would just look up at it, as he would think, yep, This is what I should have expected. As he was about ready to retreat with everyone else, he would notice that the brunette-haired girl would be trapped. Midoriya would quickly rush back as he started trying to remove the rubble. As he started to think, if my quirk was more powerful, I'd probably just destroy that zero-pointer. But right now, all I can do is try to get this off. The boy with the light red hair would rush in and help, quickly trying to melt off a lot of the rubble with his fire. As Midoriya would notice that he seemed to be shaping the fire into paws, as would get the girl out from the rubble, as they would quickly retreat from the zero-pointer. As they would manage to get out of the danger zone, Midoriya started to think about going back to get more points, but the signal would be sounded that the test was over. As Midoriya started to hope he got enough points, the brown-haired girl would thank him for trying to save her. As she introduced herself as Ochaku Uraraka. As she would thank the other boy, he would also introduce himself as Evangelion Todoroki. As Midoriya would only take a second to say, wait, Todoroki, like Endeavor? As he would say, yes, that would be my father. As Midoriya would be taken aback for a second as he said, wow, wait a minute. As Midoriya would just look at him and say, why wouldn't you just take the recommendation? As Evangelion would respond with, well, that's because there's actually 3 of us trying out for UA. You have me, my brother, and my sister. My brother took the recommendation, and me and my sister are taking the entrance exam. As Midoriya nodded, as he started to geek out a little bit, and as he asked, what are your quirks? As he said, fire, and my sister's also fire. As for my brother, as they would be only slightly interrupted when several fire trucks would rush past, as Evangelion would have a look on his face would change, as Midoriya asked, what's that expression for? As he just said, I think my sister overdid it. As we would see one of the testing grounds be on fire. As we would see into the control room, as the principal would say, well, you have a spirited child. As Endeavor would just respond with, you can say that again. And that's where we're going to leave it for today. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And I'm sorry for this getting out so late. I had a busy week, then I got a sore throat, which meant that any bits I needed to re-record, I couldn't. And yeah, by the time all that was taken care of, it got so late that I just wound up sending it out for this week's video instead. He would cover his katana with a cloth sleeve, and he would head off. When he got to UA, he found a lot of the doors were incredibly large, which he thought was odd until he realized they probably were made with the idea of people having mutation type quirks that gave them a large size. As just to let you guys, the viewers, know, breaking character here for a minute, a variety of people from class 1A have been replaced with Black Clover characters, primarily those who have almost no impact on the plot. As he walked in and saw a number of people, he saw 2 people with red hair in the back. One was the boy who helped him in in the entrance exam. Red, fiery hair. And someone else with a two-toned hair. He assumed that was his brother. As he continued looking around, he saw Bakugo in the same class. As he sighed. Especially when he saw that the boy who had openly called him out twice was arguing with him. As the blue-haired boy would approach him quickly and say, "I'm sorry for what I said before. You were clearly a more observant student than I was." Recognizing the use of rescue points, along with going back to save that girl. "I am sorry for my comments." Midoriya, getting taken aback slightly, would just say, "No worries, I just did what I thought was right." As he heard a girl's voice behind him. As the brunette would walk up and say, "I know that messy hair." As Midoriya would smile, happy to see that she had made it into the hero course. He remembered All Might mentioning that she was willing to give him all of her points to make sure he was able to get in. As Midoriya would have a sense in the back of his mind as he would turn and see a man in a sleeping bag. Everyone had freaked out for a second as they believed it was some weird caterpillar thing. But no, it turned out just to be a man who was just in a sleeping bag. That weirdness getting everyone's attention as the man called everyone to class. But when everyone got in the seats, he said, "It took you nearly a full minute to recognize my presence and settle down. That'll need to be improved." As Midoriya had a feeling this teacher was going to be a pain. A few minutes later, he would tell everyone to put on their gym uniforms and meet him outside. As everyone began to change, Midoriya would actually notice that there was a lot of his classmates who would actually have a weird sense that he knew several of his classmates. As they would get to the testing field, Aizawa would say, "I see you're finally here. Today we're going to be doing your Quirk apprehension test." As an explainer, it's basically like what you did in middle school, except instead of you just using your physical body, you'll be using your quirks as well. We live in a society that still pretends that every man and woman is physically equal. But with quirks, that is not true. As he tossed the ball to Bakugo, "You had the largest destruction score in the class. Try throwing that ball while using your quirk." As Bakugo would throw it. As it got 700 meters. People seemed pretty excited about this, and one person even made the mistake of calling it fun. As Aizawa said, "Fun. If you think it's going to be so fun, here's something for you. Whoever gets the lowest score will be expelled from the hero course." This made everyone freeze for a second and gulp, as someone called it unfair. As Aizawa said, "Do you think natural disasters are fair? Do you think people being attacked in the street is fair? The world is not fair in neither, and if you can't cut it, you're better to leave early," as they began the training. As things would go similar in canon, as Midoriya at this time would actually get a pretty good score. Thanks to his frequent training, he was pretty fit and just used his darkness to enhance his moves in some parts, as most of the scores were roughly even, except for the last person. Midoriya looked over. He could tell she was shaking, even though she was invisible. As Midoriya clenched his teeth, her quirk had nothing to do with movement or physical enhancement. It was completely passive. As Aizawa was gonna tell her something, Midoriya would actually do something that, with a little extra inspection, most would call a little foolish. He told Aizawa, "Do you really think testing all of us like this was right?" Aizawa would take a look at him. "Are you just gonna kick her out because her quirk doesn't have any offensive options? Her quirk's useful on the battlefield." As Aizawa said, "I actually agree." As Midoriya would pause for a second, as he processed the words. He agreed. As Aizawa explained, "All this was to test you." As one of the other girls says, "Wait, was I the only one who figured it out? I'm sorry, I thought everyone realized that." As Midoriya would think he was telling the truth. As Aizawa would just explain that there was a chance, but everyone here showed me potential, along with useful skills. Rough, unpolished, but potential. As Aizawa would just walk away and say, "Since you guys have missed basic orientation, I recommend you should all pick up your schedules and maps of the campus on your way out." As everyone walked away, as the invisible girl would walk up to Midoriya and thank him. As she said, "I noticed you're carrying around a book," as she also had one. This one was also a free leaf clover, but was almost completely ivory white, with some reflective parts scattered all around. As she asked if he knew what they were, as Ochanka would also walk up to him and ask the same thing. Since she had one, no one really had one at the entrance exam, but these just all of a sudden showed up. As Midoriya was thinking that they were definitely weird. As Yami in his head would just say, "Well, I guess it doesn't matter if you are reincarnated. You still get one." And thank you for getting to the end of this video, and liking, commenting, and sharing all helps me tell whether or not you want to see more of this video series. But without further ado, I will be having an update video coming out soon, along with it being the new channel trailer. And I've gotten to over 200 subscribers, and the update video won't have anything big. Just some of the what ifs I'm planning on putting out, and some stuff I plan on doing with the channel. But without any further ado, this will be Spellry signing off. Hope you have a wonderful day.